is good, good people? You are now listening to another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and once again, we're joined by an extremely special guest. I had him on At the Plate talking about his Yankees, and then I had him on again to do a retrospective on the year 1996. And I was like, you know what? It's been a while. You know, it's been a minute since we had him back on the podcast. So I was like, you know what? I want to do another retrospective / year in review. And, you know, let's get back and just reminisce on old times. So we got the good brother 12 Kyle back in the building. Kyle, what's good, bro?
Chilling, man. Chilling. First of all, glad to be back, man. Glad to be back in here with you, man. It's been a minute. And again, I said off air, I'll say it on air. Congrats on 100 episodes. You got zero to 100 relatively quickly. And, just keep doing what you're doing, man. The podcasts are dope. And I always love tapping in. I really enjoyed the episode with your mom and dad that you had last week. And just keep doing your thing, man, because this hard work pays off.
Yeah. And greatly appreciate that from you. You're one of my biggest influences, man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate
hearing that from you, that means a hell of a lot to me.
For sure.
So the reason why I brought you back is to do a retrospective on the year that was 1992. And there were a lot of things that went on in America, a lot of heavy hitting events in the news world, in the sports world, in the pop culture and music realm of things. But first and foremost, what was 1992 like for 12 Kyle?
Man, 1992 was crazy. It was a great year because I was at South Carolina State University. You see my jerseys up here for those of you watching on YouTube. I was I enrolled at South Carolina State. My freshman year was 1991, so I was going into my sophomore year playing football for South Carolina State University, and just being young and single, man, and having fun. It was a great time, man. We were really and truly outside. I was very heavily influenced by my friends and heavily influenced by the music that I listened to. And, back then, man, it was just about playing ball and girls and just being on an HBCU campus and enjoying every single minute of it.
Right on, man. 1992. I was in sixth grade in 1992.
Yeah, see, I'm slightly older than you.
Yeah, slightly, but man, it just seems like so many years apart. You already enrolled in college, and here I am just getting my feet wet at Berkeley Middle School. I remember taking part in the middle school talent shows and just trading rap tapes with my friends.
Yes.
That was a lot of fun, man. And I wasn't even able to drive yet, so it was like I had a good time, but it would have been a lot more freeing had I did all this with a driver's license, but I was too young for that. So
yeah, man.
It
was a great time to be outside and great time to be alive in 92. No lie.
Yes, indeed. So we're going to get into the year 1992. So first and foremost, arguably the biggest American event in 1992 was the LA riots. It was a series of riots and civil disturbances that occurred in LA during April and May of 1992. Unrest began in South Central on April 29th after a jury acquitted 4 officers of the LAPD charged with using excessive force in the arrest and beating of Rodney King. The incident had been videotaped by George Holliday, who was a bystander to the incident. The rioting took place in several areas in the LA metropolitan areas. Thousands of people rioted over 6 days following the verdict's announcement. Widespread looting, assault, and arson occurred during the riots, which police forces had difficulty controlling. 63 people have been killed, 2,383 had been injured, and more than 12,000 had been arrested. And estimates of property damage were over $1 billion, making it the most destructive period of local unrest in U.S. history. So 12 Kyle, and you were in college when this went down, so I know this was a huge deal.
Yeah,
so
man.
Take us into what it was like from your perspective.
It was something that we had never seen before. And the reason why I say that is because growing up, particularly with my parents, they always told us about our history. And so, my parents told me about the Watts riot back in, I think, 65 or something like that, the riots that happened after Dr. King was assassinated. So you hear about a riot, but, being able to turn the TV on and actually see civil unrest in the country that you live in. We weren't talking about the Gaza Strip. This is South Central LA. And what led to it was obviously the Rodney King verdict because the thing was that if you, particularly like someone like me who was heavily into hip hop, if you listen to groups like NWA when they talked about police brutality, this police brutality had gone on for years and years and years as far as how our community, the Black community, has been policed, not just in LA, but all across this nation. And so what happened was it was always our word against the police's word, right? And so we get this situation where Rodney King, this motorist, is getting beat by these cops. And lo and behold, somebody's videotaping. And so when the videotape comes out, everybody and their mama has seen it. Everybody's talking about it from the news. It's the first story on the news, the national news. Locally, everybody's talking about it. And so in the community, what we're thinking is, like everybody else, oh, now we have proof that these cops beat this innocent man. These cops are going to go to jail. And so I'll be honest, man, like I was a believer like everybody else. I didn't think that they weren't going to go to jail because we had visual evidence. It's one thing when a Black man gets arrested and gets beaten up by the cops and it's his story against theirs. But if you have videotape, we're thinking it's a slam dunk, right?
Yeah.
And so there were a bunch of things that happened. For long story short, I think the key thing that happened was the trial moved from LA County to Simi Valley, which I think is Orange County, which isn't LA County. So these were LA police officers in a affluent white area now being tried by a jury of their peers. Well, and if I'm not mistaken, I don't even know if there was a Black person on the jury. Nonetheless, these cops get off and all hell broke loose. I mean, like you were able to, via channels like CNN, actually watch what was going on. It was scary, but it was also sad too in the same time because obviously there were people that took advantage, just like any other any other civil unrest. People take advantage of the situation, but it was just the frustration of the people. And I was in college at the time, and being in Orangeburg, South Carolina, Orangeburg isn't so big, but I knew people who said, man, I mean, they were so pissed off. They were like, well, let's go break into some stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not breaking into nothing.
Right.
I feel for the brother Rodney King, but I ain't going to jail for none of y'all.
Yeah.
But, I understood why. But it was sad, Danny. I remember years later going to LA and going in that area, Florence and Normandy, where it actually started, and just seeing the destruction. There were still buildings 10, 15 years later that were still there, that was smoked out, that, never got rebuilt.
Wow.
All of the businesses didn't come back. So it was unfortunate because we tore down and burned down our community. But at the same time, you have to understand where they were coming from. That was their level of frustration, because they were thinking, like, if you got a videotape and these officers still get off, man, they can just kill you. You know? And he's lucky he didn't die that night.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, do you want to believe me or your lying eyes?
Exactly.
And being in sixth grade, just like what you said, my parents talked about the civil rights movement and the riots that went on during that time period. But it was just like you, it was extremely eye-opening seeing it at a young age and seeing what transpired. And I was like, wow, this is exactly what my parents were talking about. Because I would see footage of the civil rights era riots on PBS and stuff. But then I was like, wow, this is like actually happening in real time. I was like, man, this is crazy. But again, like you said, I understood their frustration, man. And I didn't even realize that they had moved the trial to Orange County. This ain't going to go good.
Not at
all. People want to invoke Dr. King all the time, but he also said, and I quote, "A riot is the language of the unheard."
Unheard, yeah.
So
and no true words have been said. You understood why.
Yeah.
And like I said, and don't get it twisted. There were times where the LAPD let buildings burn. Now, if the riots had moved over to Beverly Hills, they would have been killing people.
Yeah,
because they were simply okay with you tearing down your own community. But as the action started moving out, they were policing like crazy. But it was still sad to see. But it's a dark period in our history that cannot and won't be forgotten.
100%. Then we're going to go to one of the other big news items in the year 1992 was the Jeffrey Dahmer trial / conviction. This guy was known as the Milwaukee Cannibal. He was an American serial killer and sex offender who killed and dismembered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991. Many of his later murders involved necrophilia, cannibalism, and the permanent preservation of body parts, typically all or part of the skeleton. Dahmer was found to be legally sane at his trial. He was convicted of 15 of the 16 homicides he had committed in Wisconsin and was sentenced to 15 terms of life imprisonment on February 17th, 1992. This one blew my mind when I first heard about it. I'm like, this man is legit a cannibal.
Yeah.
So 12 Kyle, man, what were your takeaways from Jeffrey Dahmer?
That was probably one of the weirdest stories that I've heard in my lifetime, because as you're younger, you're learning things and you're growing. And I remember learning about what the word cannibal meant.
Yeah.
Because it's not a word that people just throw around. And I remember somebody, oh yeah, if you're a cannibal, you eat other people. I'm like, wait a minute, what? We don't eat each other now. We eat chicken, we eat hogs, we eat pig feet, we eat everything. Yeah. But we don't eat each other, and unfortunately, Jeffrey Dahmer was white, and I think most of his victims were black.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, this guy was, just not a weirdo, but something was seriously wrong with him. Like, there was no way to describe it. And what was interesting, Danny, as the news got reported, they were trying to find ways to bring it to the people without like grossing them out. But that whole story was, there's no way that because it's unfathomable. Yeah. And when they raided his home, he literally had body parts of people in like a freezer.
Yeah.
So like somebody's toe, somebody's elbow, it was crazy. And so like it was one of those stories, man, that you'll never forget. No, granted, now after time passed, comedians had jokes about Jeffrey Dahmer and all kind of stuff like that, but even that, it's really not funny, because it's just like it was sickening, to be honest.
And the fact that it was, like you said, it was basically all black kids that he murdered and ate. I couldn't wrap my mind around that. I was like, bro, this man is a real life cannibal. You know, I didn't think cannibalism was a real thing. It was just hard to wrap my 12-year-old mind around. And seeing news clips from that trial and then hearing the families of the victims just scream and just curse them out, I'm like, wow. Yes. Like it was 100% warranted. Not just to lose your loved one, but to lose your loved one in the way that they lost it. That was just incredibly inhumane. But he got his just desserts in prison.
Yeah, I just had to look it up because I couldn't remember when you mentioned what he was sentenced for. I thought initially you were going to say that he got the electric chair, but I don't think capital punishment was eligible in the state. So yeah, he was killed in jail. I couldn't remember how he died, but trust me, nobody sang any sad songs for him once he was up out of here.
Oh, no. Died on November 28th, 1994. Dahmer was beaten to death by Christopher Scarver, a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Portage, Wisconsin. So, yeah. Scarver, job well done. And while we're keeping it on the subject of big case trials, Mike Tyson was tried and convicted for the rape of Desiree Washington. And he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. He was released on parole after 3 years. Mike Tyson was a big deal in a lot of people's households. The man was he was like a mythical figure in the boxing ring. And then to see him go down in that fashion. So, Kyle, what were your reactions to that trial?
It was crazy, man, because the way that the trial was presented now, and what I want everybody listening and watching to understand is that in 1992, if you were able to watch the trial on TV, like a CNN, you could, or I don't even think Court TV was around then. But you could probably try to watch it on TV. But other than that, you may get updates here and there, but there was not a stream of information as far as what was happening each day, like we see in present trials and stuff like that now, particularly with celebrity cases. But, it was classic case of his word versus hers. But I think the thing was that Mike had the reputation, and he's this big menacing guy. Mike Tyson was genuinely known as the baddest man on the planet, and we've seen him knock people out within in 30 seconds of a round. And so it just sounded like to most people that, hey, he was probably guilty. I don't know if we'll ever get the truth. I know Mike had his side of the story, and he's proclaimed his innocence. Desiree Washington, I think, was the young lady's name, who accused him of sexual assault.
Mm-hmm.
She had her side of the story. I don't know if we'll ever get the truth, but there are a lot of people, particularly my age and people who were around, that thought that this girl lied on him and he went to jail for it. And what was interesting was, crime aside, or what he was accused for, what he went to jail for, you got to remember Mike Tyson at this particular time was in his prime. Yeah. So imagine Michael Jordan or LeBron going to jail and going away for 3 years, in the prime of their career, to go to prison. You can't, there's nothing you can do in prison that will simulate your activities as far as like what you do. You can box in prison, but it ain't the same. You're not fighting the same type of people. You can only shoot so many jumpers and still stay sharp. So it was interesting because you knew at that particular time, the Mike Tyson that he was before he went in and the Mike Tyson that he was when he came out were two different Mikes.
Yeah, you're right. 100% right. And I tell you what, in all of my years of living, I don't think I've experienced such a bigger hot button topic in my barbershop than that Tyson trial.
Yes.
Boy, those hot takes were flying.
Yes.
Like people on Tyson's side and people on Desiree Washington's side. And meanwhile, I was just like, man, I just want to get my hair cut.
There was no middle.
Yeah.
There was no middle.
Yeah, it was either or. Mm-hmm. But man, I just remember that. And then the fact that Tyson was like Superman. I was like, wow, he's really going to jail.
Yeah.
I was like, that's crazy. Mm-hmm. And just like you said, whenever he got out, he was different. It was just different. So the next big story in 1992 was a storm by the name of Hurricane Andrew. It was a tropical cyclone that struck the Bahamas, Florida, and Louisiana in August of 1992. It was the most destructive hurricane that ever hit Florida in terms of structures damaged or destroyed, and remained the costliest in financial terms until Hurricane Irma surpassed it 25 years later. Hit Florida, sustained winds of 165 miles an hour with max winds of 175 miles an hour. It's not often you see a Category 5 storm make direct landfall, especially in Florida. So that was a huge deal, and especially for me because I'm a huge weather geek. I don't know if any of y'all know that, but I've just always been wildly fascinated by weather. And especially going through Hurricane Hugo in 1989, I was like, wow, could it get any worse than that? And sure enough, 3 years later, here comes Hurricane Andrew barreling on the Florida coast. So, Kyle, what were your reactions to Hurricane Andrew?
Much like you, Danny, I got a chance to experience Hurricane Hugo in my hometown of Florence, South Carolina. Hurricane Hugo, I think, hit around Charleston. And by the time it got to Florence, it still was a Category 3. And we suffered a lot of damage because there were tornadoes that spawned off that hurricane. And I do remember being in my room and I was trying to go to sleep. And you know from living in the low country of South Carolina, when there are hurricanes coming or tornadoes and it sounds like a freight train outside your house, yes, that's all I could hear was just and the wind was relentless. So being able to survive Hurricane Hugo, which was a Category 3, honestly, man, I couldn't wrap my mind around a Category 5 hurricane because that was scary in and of itself. We lost power. I know you guys lost power. We lost power for like a week. But there were trees down. Fortunately for us, we had just cut down some trees in our front and backyard, maybe about a month or so prior to hurricane season starting. And I kid you not, Danny, had those trees not been cut down, they would have fallen on our house. There's one big tree that's far in our backyard, and it fell and this tree is huge. Tree fell forward, and it was probably about, I don't know, maybe 10 yards from our house. But I said all that to say this: I couldn't really wrap my mind around, the devastation of Hurricane Andrew because I just saw what Hugo did to us, like you said, just 3 years prior. And it was sad, man, because it literally blew towns off the map.
Yeah.
And I think for that particular area of South Florida, they had been lucky in years past, because here's the thing: if you live in the Southeast, hurricanes are just part of our way of life, particularly during that time of the year. It's just you hope you get word that a hurricane is coming, and then you have to make the choice as to, are you going to leave or are you going to try to ride it out? And fortunately enough for us, we're in Florence, we're so far inland that if a hurricane hit Charleston or if it hit Myrtle Beach, we're okay. You're going to get a lot of wind, you're going to get a lot of rain, but you don't have to worry. We're not on water per se, and I don't live around any ponds or lakes or anything like that, so I didn't really have to worry about flooding. But Hurricane Andrew was devastating. I mean, it literally just blew away towns, and there were parts of South Florida that took many, many years to recover. So it was really sad.
Yeah, said in total, Hurricane Andrew destroyed more than 63,500 houses.
Wow.
Damaged more than 124,000 others, caused $27.3 billion in damage, which is equivalent to $63 billion in 2025, and left 65 people dead.
Like you said, just and coming up how we came up, and like you said, even what you mentioned about the weather, I think growing up where we live, you got to be interested in the weather to some degree, because you got to stay abreast as to what's going on, especially during hurricane season.
Right. And so now we're going to go into the major sports happenings that took place in 1992. So first thing we're going to talk about is the 92 NBA Finals, where the Chicago Bulls won their second straight title, beating the Portland Trail Blazers in 6 games. And man, there's so many memories about that series. In particular, Jordan having that hot hand. It's like he punched a brick and the Mario star came out. He went off for 35 points in the first half and did the patented Jordan shrug. I thought it was going to be a big battle, especially between the rivalry between Jordan and Clyde Drexler for the Portland Trail Blazers. And Portland put up a little bit of a fight, but still, it's Jordan, it's Pippen, it's Phil Jackson. Yeah, mm-hmm. There's just too many moving parts that went in the Bulls' favor to outlast the Blazers. So, what were your biggest memories of that series?
Man, I remember that series like yesterday. First and foremost, I'm a Jordan guy. That was my guy, still is. I think he's the greatest of all time. I'm willing to hear other discussions, but I think he's the greatest of all time if you want to add somebody to that. But it was beautiful seeing, man, because I think in the year before, the Bulls played, obviously Magic and LA Lakers and they won for their first title. And so Jordan essentially with the first title had gotten the monkey off his back. And, so there was a sense of relief, but somewhere midway through the 92 season, people were talking about it like, oh yeah, y'all got one title. We don't think y'all can do it again. And if you watch The Last Dance, that Jordan takes things personal. And he really took that personal. And I don't know if I can't say that he disliked Clyde Drexler, but I think he took it personal because people were comparing Clyde to Jordan. And Jordan, for what it's worth, he never called himself the greatest of all time, but he did not want to be compared to anybody else. He felt like his game was above everybody else's, and it was. And Clyde and Portland, they had a squad. I mean, like if you go look at that lineup from 1 to 15, they had some ballers, man. It was just you just couldn't get a ring against Jordan, man. He was just going to make sure that he kept a lot of Hall of Famers from getting rings. And but that series, like you said, that game where he just 35 in the first half, I think he was like 7 for 7 from 3, which is interesting because in today's game, and I know you're a huge basketball fan, shout out to the OKC Thunder.
Let's go.
Your Thunder just won their first of probably a few championships. Shooting threes nowadays is nothing. But here's the thing. When you see those clips of Jordan shooting those threes against Portland, you got to keep in mind, Jordan really wasn't a three-point shooter. And it wasn't something that he even worked on. He always said like he didn't want to shoot a lot of threes because if he did that, he would focus on something that took him away from what he does well, which was getting to the basket, shooting his mid-range, that type of things. so he didn't shoot threes, but that game he couldn't miss. He could not miss, and they eventually won the title and got a chance to celebrate in Chicago, man. And for Jordan fans like me, it was beautiful to see because again he dominated from start to finish, and it was the icing on the top for that particular season. And then they were getting ready for the three-peat, if you will.
Yep. And then also in 1992, we had the Super Bowl 26, where the Washington Redskins beat the Buffalo Bills 37-24. And this was the fourth. I hear you, G-Man. Them winning the Super Bowl, they were the fourth team in NFL history at the time to win at least 3 Super Bowls, along with the Raiders, the Steelers, and the 49ers. And those poor Buffalo Bills, that was the second of their 4 consecutive Super Bowl losses. Mark Rippon was the Super Bowl MVP. He completed 18 of 33 passes for 292 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. The game was televised on CBS and was seen by an estimated 79.6 million viewers. That was the first time that a major television network successfully scheduled Super Bowl counter-programming, because Fox also aired a special live football-themed episode of its popular sketch comedy show in living color during the halftime show, and I completely forgot about that. So, Kyle, what were your takeaways from that Super Bowl?
Okay, before I tell you that, I'll let you in on a little secret. Well, it's not a secret. If you know, you know. But In Living Color did so well that particular Super Bowl because what happened was they had it scheduled and there was a countdown on Fox to where what they wanted to do was take the Super Bowl audience away from their halftime show and bring them to Fox. So you could watch In Living Color. Basically, they did a sketch run of their show and it only lasted maybe 20 minutes or however long the NFL halftime was. And so they did that and they were wildly successful as far as the numbers were concerned. And what the NFL said was, we got to step our game up as far as our halftime show.
Yeah.
And that's when the NFL halftime show became a thing. I want to say the following year, I want to say it was Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. Yep.
So because I went to the Super Bowl, full disclosure, my uncle played for the New York Giants. So I'm a diehard Giants fan. My uncle's Harry Carson, 9-time Pro Bowler, Pro Football Hall of Famer. And we went to Super Bowl 21. And I want to say the halftime show was like Disney on Ice. Like it was
what?
It was, man, listen, Danny, I could have fallen asleep in that thing. It was that boring. It was crazy. So the NFL, they kind of stepped their game up after In Living Color did that thing on Fox, because at that particular time, Fox wasn't carrying football then. So it was just CBS, NBC, and ABC. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit of history. But I do remember that game. Like you said, I kind of feel for the Buffalo Bills. I was rooting for the Buffalo Bills because I wasn't going to root for the Redskins, now Commanders. But Mark Rippon did his thing, and it was just unfortunate because Buffalo. To get to 4 Super Bowls, consecutively is unreal, and to lose 4 is just been tough. And they've been close since then, but haven't been able to get over the hump, man. So shout out to Buffalo Bills fans.
And speaking of which, if you haven't seen it, there's a great 30 for 30 called The Four Falls of Buffalo. And I highly recommend that 30 for 30 if you haven't seen it. It's talking about the Buffalo Bills futility clinic in the Super Bowl. 4 straight years and come away with nothing, man. That sucks.
And they had great teams. They had Hall of Famers, but they just couldn't get it done.
Man. And then another thing that happened in 1992 that really shook up the world was the Dream Team in the Barcelona Olympics. Because in '88 Olympics, the basketball team was all college players still, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
And then 1992, they allowed NBA players to play. And basically, it was 11 Hall of Famers and Christian Laettner, which was just so out of place. But yeah, they absolutely whooped ass. They beat all of their opponents by an average of 44 points en route to winning the gold medal round against Croatia. Man, Kyle, that was a time. Talk to me.
Man, it was great. Again, huge fan of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. Really, the catalyst for that dream team was Charles Barkley. And Barkley and I think Barkley might have averaged like 16, 17, and I think he led them in scoring. But just seeing that assembly of talent, I mean, we were able to put our best players on the court because we were no longer sending college players, because when we were sending college players, we were getting bronze medals and stuff like that because they were playing, in essence, against pros.
Yeah.
And so you're not sending college kids anymore. So now we have the name fit, the dream team. It is the greatest assembly of basketball talent ever on a basketball court. You had Magic, who was, pretty much in his prime. Jordan was in his prime. Bird was on the backside of his career, but he was still dropping, and sitting on the bench chilling. It was, I mean, that team, those games were must see. And here's the thing. Here's the funny thing, Danny. The games were must see TV, but we were going to win. It was just a question of how much we were going to win by. And the thing that I remember too was them going against Croatia. Scottie Pippen and Jordan wanted to send a message because the Bulls owner, Jerry Krause, the general manager, Jerry Krause, had been recruiting a guy by the name of Tony Kukoc, who played for Croatia. Yep. And when I tell you, Danny, they picked up full court press on Tony Kukoc. Imagine playing full court press in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And man, he was a turnover machine, man. He and Michael and Scottie defensively were two of the greatest wing players. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a fan. Defensively, they were two of the greatest wing players the way that they could anticipate passes. It was a sight to see, but just the whole dream team, hearing the stories about the dream team practices, that's the thing that legends are made of. But yeah, I mean, I remember there was one game, I think they played some African country or whatever.
They played Angola.
And they were taking, they wanted to take a picture with the dream team. The Angola team wanted to take a picture with the dream team before the game. They asked Charles Barkley actually for his autograph, and he gave an autograph. He's like, "Yeah, I'm about to bust your ass in a minute as soon as this game starts." So it was wild, man. But I mean, we brought home the gold, and some people frowned their faces up, but we didn't care.
Yeah. And another big sports story that happened in 1992, and this was off the heels of Magic Johnson's HIV announcement, was in April of 1992. Tennis great Arthur Ashe publicly announced that he had the AIDS virus. He was believed to acquired HIV from a blood transfusion he received during heart bypass surgery in 1983. And he ended up dying from AIDS-related pneumonia at the age of 49 on February 6, 1993. So our parents really weren't into sports like that, but my mom, for some reason, she would always watch out for tennis, specifically with the black tennis players. And I vividly remember her telling me about Arthur Ashe, and she would tell me about Zena Garrison and Malavi Washington and now Tia Gibson. But it was just something about Arthur Ashe that just stuck with her. And I remember her always telling me about him. And I remember she brought home a Ebony magazine, and him and his wife were on the cover with their child. And I was like, oh, that's dope. He was a little before my time, but my mom would always talk about his greatness. And again, off the heels of Magic Johnson making his announcement, but he had HIV, but Arthur Ashe announcing that he had full-blown AIDS. Yeah. And that one gutted me. I got to be honest. That one gutted me because it also, you remember that kid, Ryan White?
Yeah.
They got that. He contracted AIDS from a blood transfusion as well. And I was just like,
I think he was in a Michael Jackson video, right?
I think
if he wasn't in the video, Michael Jackson did some type of tribute for him.
Yeah. But just the fact that they both acquired that disease from a transfusion, that one really messed with me. So, Kyle, what were your takeaways from Arthur Ashe?
Yeah, man, I got to even go back a little further. You mentioned Magic when I'll never forget that day that Magic announced. It was November 7th, 1991. Again, I was on the campus of South Carolina State University. And I remember walking into the dorm, and you know how dudes have the doors open and stuff. I remember seeing people crying, and I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And somebody said, man, Magic got AIDS. And I'm like, what do you mean? And, you hear stuff like that. And I thought it was a bad rumor. And I go in and I turn on the TV, and the first story that comes on is Magic, and they cut from the local news to his press conference. And his press conference was at like 6:00. And he announced it. And honestly, and I always say this, and I actually did an episode about it, when we saw Magic that day, I thought that was the last time we'd see him as we saw him. So he was able to, push through it. He came back and, like you said, played with the dream team. But when we got the news about Arthur Ashe, that one hit home because I actually remember watching him play. I know where I've saw quite a few matches. And the thing that I always say about Arthur Ashe was a better man than he was a tennis player. Yeah. And he was a great tennis player, but he was an incredible man. If you want to find yourself some inspiration, if you're looking for inspiration anytime, do yourself a favor. Go to your Google machine, type in Arthur Ashe quotes. Some of the words that he left us with are some of the best things that you'll read on a day-to-day basis. But he was a man that walked it, he talked it, he lived it. It was just unfortunate that his life got cut short. But, when we heard, that he had AIDS, and it was funny, Danny, I remember him talking about he was having some type of heart issue and he was going to have, open heart surgery. And they said the surgery went well, but, at that particular time, this is the late 80s, early 90s, medicine wasn't what it is today. And somehow, they didn't screen some of the blood that he was given and, the blood that he got during that blood transfusion while he had open heart surgery. There was a transfer of the HIV virus, which eventually turned into AIDS. But we lost a great man. And like I said, a great humanitarian. He was, when I think of Arthur Ashe, like I said, I always think of him as a man before I think of him as a tennis player. And he was a phenomenal tennis player.
Yeah. So, man, R.I.P. Arthur Ashe, man. You were a real one. And now we're going to get into the pop culture / music portion of the program. So the first thing I want to discuss was something that was all the craze in 1992, and that was the opening of the Mall of America in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Still the largest mall in the United States and the largest in the Western Hemisphere, 12th largest shopping mall in the world. And I just remember seeing news clips on their grand opening. And prior to that, the biggest mall that I had seen was Eastland Mall in Charlotte.
Okay.
And it was 2 stories and they had a skating rink on the first floor. Yeah, man, R.I.P. Eastland Mall. Mm-hmm. But when they showed the clips of Mall of America on the news, and I'm like, bro, these jokers got an amusement park in this mall. This is crazy. Bro. I actually didn't get to visit it until 2009. I had a connecting flight one weekend. I was flying from Kansas City. My flight connected in Minneapolis, and then I was going to go from Minneapolis to Charlotte. Okay. But because of inclement weather, the rest of the flights got canceled by the time my plane landed in Minneapolis. So I was stuck there for probably 20 some odd hours.
Okay.
And so I just took the light rail into the city and just explored. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yo, I can go in the Mall of America. And even then, in 2009, my mind was still blown. I was like, man, this is incredible. So, Kyle, what were your thoughts about Mall of America? Because I know you used to do some work stints in Minneapolis. So
yeah, man. The Mall of America, I tell people, even you don't even have, because I'm not even a big fan of malls, but it is a sight to see. It is a place that you have to go to just to say that you've been there. I remember its opening in 1992, and I remember people talking about it. It's like, oh man, they got this, they got that, but it doesn't resonate until you actually go there. Much like you, I got a chance to go in 2010. No, actually first time I went, I think it was 2009, because my job, I was actually working and living in Minneapolis. So what I was doing was the company that I worked for, I would work during the week in Minneapolis. So I lived in a hotel, rental car, they paid for all that stuff. And then they would fly me home to Atlanta on the weekends. And then I'd fly back on Sundays. And I remember the first time that I went there in 2009, man, I went in there, Danny, and it's one of those things where, I mean, like you literally and figuratively could spend the entire Saturday in the mall. Yes. I mean, like, because it's so many different, I think it's like 4 levels. And like you said, they have a real amusement park with roller coasters in the middle of the mall. So there's plenty of things to do. There's plenty of shopping that you can do during my time in Minneapolis, because I was in Minneapolis. I did that job for the better part of a year and a half. I would go to Mall of America often. I mean, like at least maybe once a week. So it was kind of like my little hangout. There was a Bubba Shrimp place. I used to go there and eat all the time, which they had the best food. And
I ate there too.
Yeah, man, low key, Minneapolis. And I tell people all the time that Minneapolis is a beautiful city.
Yes.
When it's warm.
I was about to say, great. It's great to go in the summertime.
It's great. It is great. And I remember one of my coworkers who lived there, a brother, he told me, he said, look, I said, well, and he had been there like for 20 years. And I said, man, how do you deal with this? He said, man, listen, he said, the spring and the summer are why we live here. He said, because you can't beat this kind of weather. Even when it's 85 degrees, there's a nice breeze coming through. It doesn't feel hot. But when I tell you summertime, everybody's outside every day. Everybody's up because they understand that they only have so many days of great weather. Mm-hmm. You know, when it's still warm for us in the South in October and, you know, August and September, October and into November, you know, they're putting their jackets back on. So, but it's a beautiful city. Mall of America, I would suggest anybody who's listening or watching to go check it out. It is a sight to see.
Could not agree more. And another thing that had America by the throat in 1992 was the debut of Crystal Pepsi. I remember seeing the commercial for Crystal Pepsi, and they had the Van Halen song Right Now was just blasting during this commercial, and they're pouring this Pepsi into this cup, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this a new Sprite or something? It was like Crystal Pepsi.
Right.
I'm like, huh? It's like this is mind blowing to me. And then and I was just sitting there doing the Birdman hand rub. I'm like, all right, so eventually we're gonna have it in the vending machines. So I want to see what it's hitting for. Mm-hmm. And I was in 6th grade at the time, and like 2 weeks later, it was just like word of mouth by the beginning of the day. It was like, yo, they got Crystal Pepsi in the Coke machine by the guidance counselor's office. Pass it on. And by the time lunch came around, it was already sold out. I was like, man. But I think about a week later, I was actually able to try Crystal Pepsi for the first time, and the novelty wore off immediately.
Yeah.
I was like, man, all right, it's just regular ass Pepsi in the clear liquid form. Mm-hmm. So, do you remember the Crystal Pepsi craze?
I remember it vividly, man. It was just that. It was a craze. And I'm not even a Pepsi drinker. I've always been a Coke guy, Coca-Cola. But, you know, if you're like me and Danny from the South, most people, you got to pick one or the other. Like it's either Coke or it's Pepsi. I don't know many people who drink both. And we were kids, like when Danny and I were coming up. So we drank, I'm pretty sure Danny, I think I can speak for you, drank a lot of sodas growing up.
Oh, hell yeah.
So I remember the Crystal Pepsi. I mean, to their credit, Pepsi did a hell of a job as far as marketing it to the people. So they made it sound and feel like it was something that you had to try. But like Danny said, they called it Crystal Pepsi because it looked like Sprite. It was clear as opposed to, you know, Pepsi being dark. And so there was a big rush for people to get it. And I eventually got it and I tried it. It didn't move me. I was like, yeah, it tastes like Pepsi. You know, it actually tasted like flat Pepsi, like diet Pepsi. And I was like, oh no. So I think I had it twice and I was just like, nah, I'm good. So it was, but to their credit, they did a hell of a job as far as marketing. I can't remember any other soda being pushed like that and having that type of, push behind, having that type of marketing promotion going forward.
And you know what, speaking of that, it got me to thinking, it kind of is like the soda equivalent of the McDLT for me.
There you go.
They used to push and market the hell out of McDLT. Yep. And I remember the commercial, hot side stays hot. Cool side stays cool. I'm like, okay, they serving, that's fancy. They got it in the styrofoam container. And I told the story a couple times on the podcast, but we went on a field trip when I was in 2nd grade and we made a stop at a McDonald's.
Okay.
And I was like, oh man, I might be able to sink my teeth into this McDLT. So I placed the order and they hand me the styrofoam container. I'm like, all right, it's go time. And I bit into it. I'm like, man, that's a regular ass hamburger. Man, they duped me. So yes, had the same reaction with Crystal Pepsi that I did with McDLT. So yeah, good job marketing agencies.
Oh yeah, they did the thing. Somebody should have gotten a promotion because they
for real,
they marketed the hell out of that.
Yes, they did. And now we're going to get into a little bit of music. Yeah. So first thing I want to talk about in 1992, and this took the world by storm. December 15th, 1992, Dr. Dre's The Chronic was released. And that was an absolute moment because he introduced an entirely new sound with G-Funk. He introduced the world to Snoop Dogg. Man, it was just a perfect storm. A perfect storm. A West Coast resurrection, so to speak. So, Kyle, what were your memories of The Chronic?
Man, I remember so many things about The Chronic. I remember getting it the day that it came out. Like you said, December 15th, 1992. I'll never forget. I was in Orangeburg, South Carolina, again at South Carolina State University, going to the Prince of Orange Mall to get
Prince of Orange Mall, yes.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. And copped it, man. And I just remember that was one that I did not leave the mall parking lot. I literally sat in the car, and me and my homeboy, we listened to The Chronic in the car. I don't think we started heading back toward campus until we were maybe about 4 or 5 songs in.
Yeah.
But man, that album was everywhere. On a college campus, a black college campus, you couldn't walk the yard without hearing it in a passing car. You couldn't go through the dorms and not hearing it. And I'm talking girls' dorms, boys' dorms, whomever. It was just everywhere. And the music was, I mean, like, this was Dre's top-notch level of producing. And we had seen and heard Snoop on the Deep Cover soundtrack, but now he's here with Dre, and Dre's got these slew of MCs, and he's in a beef with, Luke and all of these other people and Eazy-E, and it's crazy because, this was one of the first times that we really saw Dre stand out without NWA. It was his first album, but it wasn't his first song. But but that album, it changed everything. It is truly a game changer. It put the West Coast on the map as far as West Coast hip hop, and it went to another level from where NWA was. NWA set the bar, was part of the foundation for the West, and that album, The Chronic, still resonates to this day. And I tell people all the time, like, if you didn't get it that day or maybe the next day, there were places that sold out of copies. I mean, like, because here's the thing, kids, we didn't have the albums on our phones. We couldn't just, we had to physically leave our house or apartment or dorm, go to the store, purchase it, come back and play it, either on our tape decks or our CD players or what have you. But yeah, man, that album still resonates to this day. It's an album I still play. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 songs you probably have to push past it, but even when you listen to it, you understand that it was recorded during the backdrop of the riots in 92. So, right. A lot of that energy and everything came from, what they were feeling at the time. You go into the studio and you're seeing your city on fire, so they dealt with a lot in making that album, but it's a phenomenal album. I personally think it's a classic, definitely a West Coast classic. And like I said, I never get tired of listening to it.
Yeah. Shout out to the 20 Sack Pyramid.
yes. Shout out to other than the Doctor set with Dre, that's probably the only skip for me. I mean, but other than that, I still rock with it to this day. It bangs literally from start to finish.
Yes. What's your favorite track on The Chronic?
Let Me Ride.
Same here. Same here.
That's my favorite Dre track. I think, man, that song, I never get tired of listening to it. Never.
You and me both. And keeping it hip hop, and this is something that's near and dear to my heart because they were in my age group. On February 6, 1992, Jump by Kriss Kross shook the world.
Right.
And shook my brain to the core. Man, oh my gosh. It was the 3rd best-selling song of 1992 with sales of nearly 2.1 million physical copies that year. And oh my gosh. I wanted my mom to let me wear my clothes backwards so bad, but she was not having it. Oh, man, it used to burn me up. I'd have to wait until I got on the bus because I sat on the very back seat, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to wear my pants backwards. And my teachers weren't having it either. They were like, why are your pants backwards? It's Kriss Kross. They're like, who? But yeah, man, it was just, that was a moment. That was a moment. And everybody on the bus, it was like, Yo, I bet I can say miggity, 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 Mac faster than you. I was like, no, you can't watch me. And yeah, I used to wreck shop with the miggity, miggity. What were your memories of Jump?
Man, listen, that you took me back with that because I remember me and a lot of my partners, we was like, man, we not listening because they were kids, relatively speaking, compared to us. Because again, we were in college.
Yeah.
They were kids, so I'm like, man, I ain't listening to no kids group. And then they had the clothes on backwards. And when Jump came out, like we were like, we really kind of tried to front on it, Danny. I ain't gonna lie, we tried to front on it, but then after a while, it's like, okay, it's cool. And then you started hearing it more and more and more. And then by the time the video came out, we got the visuals of them literally with their clothes on backwards. Man, it was dudes on South Carolina State campus turning their clothes inside out, turning them on back. I'm like, nah, I'm not going that far. But I did try it once. I did try to see how the pants felt, but it was wildly uncomfortable for me. So I had to turn them around and do them the way they're supposed to be. But yeah, that, like you said, that was a moment, man. That was a moment. Those kids, the Krisses, they took the world by storm. And that song was a huge record everywhere. And subsequently people went out and bought that album. And I didn't buy it, but I copped the dub. It wasn't a bad album at all.
Yeah. The amount of time, I'm low-key ashamed of the amount of times I used to call into the Hot 9 at 9 and Z93 to request that song. Man, I know they were sick of me calling in because I literally would call in like every single night. Please, can you please play Jump by Kriss Kross? Man, and just as a testament to the timelessness of that record, I remember this was 2022 or 2023, whatever the last year was that the Tar Heels made it to the ACC championship in football.
Okay.
And right outside of the stadium over in Bearden Park, they had the ACC Fan Fest. And I'll never forget, the DJ threw that song on, and everybody from every single walk of life, I'm talking like from 8 to 80, stopped what they were doing, and everybody, including myself, we got involved when Jump came on. I was like, wow. This thing came out in 92 and it still has people in a vice grip like this, man. You can't deny the impact.
You can't front. You can't front.
You can't. And speaking of an undeniable impact, on April 2nd, 1992, one of the most timeless hip hop classics of all time dropped. They Reminisce Over You by Pete Rock and CL Smooth. Man, I remember the first time I heard this song. Again, I was sitting on the back of the bus, and shout out to my homie Randy Cooper. We were like this in middle school, and he was a big hip hop head like I was too. He was like, "Yo, Danny, you got to listen to this," and he gave me his headphones to his Walkman, and he pressed play. And as soon as I heard that, and I'm just leaning back in my chair like, what am I listening to right now? And then as soon as CL Smooth comes in, I reminisce for a spell, or should I say think back, and just like I never heard a voice like his before. It was just like a butterscotch voice, man. It was I'm nerding out just thinking about that moment again. Again, that's an undeniable record. So where were you when you first heard They Reminisce Over You?
I had to have been in the dorm again, at South Carolina State. And I remember that song resonated, not because it was a jam, but Pete Rock and CL Smooth were very big, especially on our campus. And it really hit home for me because I was a fan of the guy who the song is about, Trouble T. Roy.
Yeah.
As many of you know, Trouble T. Roy was a backup dancer for Heavy D and the Boys. He was one of the boys. And tragically, he got killed in a freak accident. They were in Indianapolis, and they were outside of the I think it was Market Square Arena. They were doing a sound check for a concert or something that they were going to do. And somebody rolled the trash can. They were like rolling trash cans down this embankment. And he went to jump over and they did it playing. And he jumped over the trash can, and he was on the ledge, and he fell off the ledge. And he fell like it was like a 30-foot drop, and he died. And so to hear a song dedicated, and I'm a huge Heavy D and the Boys fan. In fact, that was the first concert that I ever attended. Heavy D and the Boys came to my hometown and performed in my high school. So I've been a fan literally since day one. And that was when the only song they had was Mr. Big Stuff. So long story short, to hear that song and hear CL talk so glowingly about Trouble T. Roy was special. And the beat and everything was special. And I love now being older, being able to hear the song that Pete Rock sampled, which is crazy. But yeah, that song always hits home, man, and it's always been a jam. And if you go to any party with anybody 35 and up, you put that on, all you're gonna hear is oh.
Yep.
So it still resonates, man.
Man, and I remember Pete Rock talking about the making of that song, and he said when they were in the studio, leaders of the new school were in there too, and when he played it for them, he was like, Busta Rhymes and Charlie Brown were just like boohoo crying when he played it for them. I was like, wow, man, that's a testament to the power of music, man. Good music will always hit you right square in the gut.
Always.
Man, so 1992 in a nutshell. What a time to be alive, man. So any last remarks?
Yeah, man. I think it was like I said, it was a great year for music. Obviously, we experienced a lot. The thing that I just remember about that year was just personally trying to, do what I could to hone my skills on the football field and excel in the classroom. And I just remember just being outside and just having fun, man. Every day was something different. And it was new. And I like the fact that, even though we had some rough times with the riots and stuff like that, we always seemed to find a way to come together, me and my friends, and we always seemed to find, things to do. And again, we were the last generation without the internet. So we made our own fun. And, there wasn't cell phones. There wasn't anything. We were always outside because something was always happening outside.
Yeah.
And so, when I think back to that time frame and I think back to the music like the Chronic, all I have is just great memories, man. I just have, and I know I sound sometimes when I talk about it, sound so glowingly like it was perfect. It wasn't perfect, but it was perfect for us at that particular time, if that makes sense.
Yes, indeed, man. 1992 was special, especially me, this is my coming of age, and then just getting hit with so much timeless music and so many monumental events that really shaped my thought process in with all the things that transpired in that year. And yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything, man.
No,
12 Kyle, thank you so much for being a guest on here, man. We got to do this. We got to do this way more often. Matter of fact, you got an open invite to anytime you want to chop it up. Just say the word and we'll make it happen.
Man, I'm always free, man. Just let me know. You guys, again, thanks again for having me on. I promise you I'll be back, and I promise that because I already have an episode for you.
Okay.
You just got to set the time. I got it in my phone right now, and it's got Danny Foxworth written all over it.
Bet. So go ahead and plug your podcast, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. The 12 Kyle podcast, we drop new episodes every Thursday and every Sunday at midnight. You can find it on all DSPs as well as YouTube as well. And then I have the Rap Soul podcast. It's a new baby of mine where we talk about artists and music when it deals with hip hop, rap, soul, and we talk about that. And we have episodes every Monday and every Friday. It is a music podcast. So if you enjoyed me talking about music here, definitely want to check it out. I tell people it's the best music podcast that you've never heard, so you should check it out. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have Danny on, because Danny's a huge music head as well. So, but yeah, again, brother, I appreciate it, man. This has been a lot of fun, and it's been good to reminisce, so to speak, on this episode.
For lack of a better term.
So exactly.
thank you for being on, and thank you, listeners. Sure. Thank y'all for tuning in. Make sure you like, download, or subscribe to Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find it at Danny Foxworth 843. There you can find videos of every episode of this podcast, as well as my baseball podcast, At the Plate with Danny Foxworth, my Candle podcast, A Wicked Good Time with Danny Foxworth, and Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. And for Kyle and myself, this has been another episode of Since We Last Spoken. Until next time, y'all be good. Peace.
5 G's.